100 billion stars like the sun in the Milky Way galaxy alone. Most of them formed billions of years before the sun. And there are billions of Earth-Sun analogs. Now, we all believe that we came out of a soup of chemicals. That's the scientific narrative of how human intelligence came on this Earth. And so it's quite likely that, we are not the first one. Sorry to break the news, Elon Musk was probably not the most accomplished space entrepreneur since the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago. And therefore, we should consider the possibility that things like us existed long before us. And you can ask the question, how long does it take our own technology, the Voyager spacecraft that we launched out of the solar system, how long does it take it to move to the opposite side of the Milky Way galaxy? Thousands of light years away, takes less than 1 billion years. And that means that all these civilizations that had their history initiated billions of years before ours could have done it. And all we need to do as responsible scientists is to check if among all the rocks that come from outside of our backyard are really rocks, or maybe one of these objects might be a tennis ball that was thrown by a neighbor. And the reason I say that is, we live at our home, on Earth, next to the sun. We look around us in the cosmic street, and we see a lot of houses just like ours. There are billions of them, probably. Now, my colleagues, those scientists who think traditionally, they say, well, microbes came to Earth very early, therefore they must be everywhere. So let's define our highest priority, searching for microbes on other houses in our cosmic street. And I say, good, you can do that from the vantage point of your home. You can look through the window and search for microbes in your neighbors' yards, but you would need to put $10 billion to develop a big enough instrument that would be able to detect the chemical fingerprints of microbes, on exoplanets. And think about the possibility that there is a resident in one of those houses. That resident might show up in your front door at some point, or you might see an object that arrives to your backyard or your mailbox from that resident.
A black swan event.
A black swan event. Or you might see some construction project from a distance. That might be easier to detect than microbes. So we should hedge our bets. We should invest billions of dollars on both fronts. At the moment, the scientific community is willing to allocate more than $10 billion to searching for microbes, but no recommendation is made to allocate any federal funding to the search for intelligence. And I say that is an oversight.
Now, they have found evidence of microbes on Mars, correct?
Well, it's not conclusive.
Evidence?
We need to bring materials back. It's called sample return, and NASA has plans. We need to bring a sample back to Earth so that in our laboratories we can do isotope analysis and make sure that whatever signatures we see on the rocks there that do look as if they were made by microbes, because we know that Mars had an atmosphere like the Earth. By the way, Mars may have had life before the Earth because it's a smaller body, so it has a bigger surface area for its mass. The mass of the object tells you how much heat it can retain from the formation process, and then the surface area tells you how fast it can cool. And Mars could have cooled faster than the Earth. So life may have started on Mars, actually, because it had rivers, lakes, oceans of water, and it could have been actually delivered to Earth. We might be all Martians, and when Elon Musk, considers going to Mars, it might be the second trip around. We might be going back to our childhood home because there were tiny astronauts inside rocks that were chipped off the surface of Mars that arrived to Earth and seeded the Earth with life as we know it.
Panspermia.
Yeah. And in fact, we can find out if we get this material back to Earth, as NASA is planning to do, hopefully within a decade, then we can make sure that these were microbes. And perhaps we can infer whether the building blocks of these microbes are similar to the ones we have here on Earth, whether the DNA, RNA kind of process took place in both places.
Have you ever done any research on the structural anomalies that are on Mars, particularly the right angles that appear to be a square, this enormous structure?
Yeah, I've seen the data. It's not conclusive, but it's intriguing because both Mars and the Moon have no atmosphere right now. So what happens on Earth is that when an object roughly the size of a person, or smaller, goes through the atmosphere, it burns up, creates a fireball, just like an atomic explosion, and actually you have an object of order a meter colliding with Earth every year. Every year there is an atomic explosion size fireball in our atmosphere. It's not reported in the news because it happens pretty high at an altitude of 50 kilometers, so it doesn't do anything. And 71% of the Earth is covered by oceans. But yes, so these meteors, and they are quite important. Obviously, we know that the dinosaurs 66 million years ago were extinguished by a giant impact by an asteroid the size of Manhattan Island. And we are aware, by the way, that such an impact could endanger us. And that's why the US Congress tasked NASA to find all objects that come close to Earth with a size bigger than a football field, about 140 meters, so that we avoid the fate of the dinosaurs. So we think we are smart, we can see these rocks coming, but just imagine alien technology. It will not follow a path that you expect if it has some intelligence in it. And that's a risk that was never attended to. And I wrote a white paper to the United Nations and to the International Astronomical Union to develop a strategy for monitoring interstellar objects that come from outside the solar system, like 3I Atlas, that show anomalies that could potentially be technological in origin.
The structures on Mars, like what do you think when you look at them? When you see that one that looks like a square? I think
it's very intriguing. Both Mars and the Moon have no atmosphere, so the objects that come into them do not burn up, as I mentioned before about Earth, and therefore they serve as museums. Okay, so any space junk that might have landed on Mars over the past 2 billion years would not have burned in the atmosphere. It would have landed, and we need to check the surface, even if we know that there wasn't any civilization out there over the past 2 billion years because conditions are really harsh.
Right.
Mars may have collected technological debris from other civilizations because it would stay on the surface. It's just like a museum.
This is an enormous structure. It's at least, I think they think 300 meters, but
yeah, but that's not enormous because
quite a bit longer.
3I Atlas, the size of 3I Atlas is at least 5 kilometers in diameter. And I derived it in a paper a couple of weeks ago because we know that it's losing mass. So, it's mostly from the side that is facing the sun. And you would have gotten some recoil as a result of that in the opposite direction, just like a rocket. And I used, together with two colleagues, 4,000 data points from 227 observatories around the Earth of 3I Atlas that monitored its motion across the sky. And we were able to say that the trajectory is sculpted only by gravity. There is no evidence for this recoil. And that means that the object is very massive. And I derived a value of 33 billion tons. A huge thing, which if you take solid density, it means it's more than 5 kilometers in diameter. So when you mention a few hundred meters, that's nothing.
Right.
And this object, by the way, was discovered just over the past decade of observing the sky. So who knows how much debris collected on the surface of Mars or the Moon, because they are good museums, and by the way, I see that as their most important value. Let me just say one thing about my fundamental point of view.
Okay.
Each of us would live for about 100 years if we are lucky, right? That's the kind of... It's pretty depressing, right? Because there is so much we would like to know, and we have only 100 years. So And, that already tells you that you need to be modest and humble because you don't have a lot of time, right? So why engage in conflicts? Why reduce the lifespan of other people, in wars? It makes no sense, all of this.
Right.
You have limited time. Let's just use it for something constructive. Anyway, we are born on this rock, which is just 3 millionths of the mass of the sun. It's leftover material from the formation process of the sun. Some debris was left over in a disk and the earth was made out of that. That's it. And it's just a speck of material, nothing significant. And this earth was moving around the sun 4.54 billion times before the Vatican even existed. And why do I say the Vatican? Because the Vatican put Galilei in house arrest when he said, I don't think everything moves around the earth. I see some moons through my telescope. I see some moons around Jupiter. They don't seem to revolve around the earth. They revolve around Jupiter. Therefore, the earth is not at the center. So they put him in house arrest. Today, they would have, canceled him on social media. and my point is, that's the first sign that, humans they want to think that it's all about them,
Right.
And it's not surprising. But the Vatican admitted their mistake. In 1992, they issued an official letter saying Galileo was right. That was 350 years after he died. And, it's the worst public relations affair that you can have to admit that you were wrong for 350 years. And how could they have avoided that? Very simply, if they said, we have more money than Galileo, we will build an even bigger telescope to figure out the truth, and we would prove him wrong. And then they would have found that he was right. And so then they would have corrected course shortly
or
after.
They would have put more people under house arrest. That's probably what they would have done.
Yeah, so my point is, it's really important in cases like this or 3i Atlas, it's really important to get as much data as possible. Because once you reach a certain threshold, you can't shove anomalies under the carpet of traditional thinking, the way that my colleagues do. Just to give you an example, the first interstellar object was Oumuamua, okay? And it was discovered 2017, and it was really strange because it was shaped like a pancake based on all the data we have, and it was pushed away from the sun by some mysterious force without showing any evaporation, no gas or dust around it.